Hello everyone. So in this video we will talk about the different types of conductors that we come across. Basically when we talk about conductors, conductors are something that is able to conduct electricity. Okay, and an opposite term for conductors are insulators, which means those which are not conducting electricity are referred to as the insulators. Okay. So in general, if we talk about the different types of conductors, we have two different types mainly. One is the electronic conductors, or also referred to as the metallic conductors. Then we have another type which we refer to as the electrolytic conductors. Now, let's try to understand. Many of you know it's a very simple and straightforward terms. Now, electronic conductors, as you can understand from the name, what it means is here the conduction of electricity is basically as a result of the movement of electrons. Okay, so that is what is responsible for conduction in the electronic or the metallic conductors. Okay, and since it only involves movement of electrons, therefore we do not say any kind of decomposition in the material or the metal while the conduction of electricity happens. Okay, and so that is about the basically the electronic or the metallic conductors. Okay, so this also includes alloys also. Okay, they are basically semiconductors. They are also a type of electronic conductors. Okay, now the other different type of conductor is the electrolytic conductors. Okay, and they are also referred to as the electrolytes because they are basically made up of electrolytes. Okay, so what are electrolytic conductors? Electrolytic conductors here, as you can see previously, electronic conductors involve the movement of electrons, but in electrolytic conductors we have the movement of ions happening. Okay, so basically the electrolytes is dissociating into ions, and these ions are then responsible for conduction in these conductors. Okay, and therefore we have a decomposition happening while the conduction of electricity happens. Okay, so these are the main two types of conductors that we find, and further in the coming videos we'll talk more about the electrolytic conductors and the various parameters connected with the same. Okay, now electrolytes or electrolytic conductors, they are basically of two types. One is the strong electrolytes, another is the weak electrolyte. Now what is the strong electrolyte? Strong electrolytes are those electrolytes which in their molten state or in their aqueous solution, they are almost completely ionized. Okay, so when that happens, we say that electrolyte to be a strong electrolyte. Okay, and because it's completely ionized, therefore we have large number of ions present, and therefore they will conduct to a larger extent. Now, in comparison to the strong electrolyte, weak electrolytes have a lower degree of dissociation, and therefore the number of ions that is generated is very less, and therefore we have the conduction happening to a small extent. Now, if you compare the examples, all the strong acids and bases and most of these salts, they fall under the criteria of strong electrolytes. However, weak acids and weak bases, they are mostly the coming under the category of the weak electrolytes. Okay, now before I conclude this video, I would like to also indicate to you some of the major differences that we see between these two types of conductors. Okay, so as you can see here, what we see is uh, I have divided into two columns. We have the metallic conductor versus the electrolytic conductors. So what you see here is first is the flow. First difference is the flow of electricity takes place without the decomposition of substance. So in metallic conductors, the flow of electricity take place without any kind of decomposition of the substance, because it involves only conduction of electrons. So as such, when you connect two ends of the battery to a metal, we have flow of electron, and therefore we see conduction happening in metal, but the metal itself doesn't undergo any kind of decomposition. So that is what it means here. So flow of electricity takes place without any decomposition of the substance. However, when it comes to electrolytic conductors or electrolytes, the flow of electricity accompanies decomposition of the substance. That's pretty clearly understood, because whenever you dissolve a salt, it decomposes into ions, and that ions is what is responsible for conduction in the electrolytic conductors. And therefore, here the conduction happens as a result of decomposition of the substance. Second difference, we talk about the flow of electricity is happening due to the flow of electrons only, and there is no flow of matter, because it's simply the freely available electrons in the metal that are responsible for the flow of electricity, and therefore there is no movement of matter as such. Okay, so depending upon the conductance depends upon the structure and density of the metal and the number of valence electron per atom. So we know the loosely bound electrons on the metals are responsible for the free electrons, and that are responsible for conduction. So as the number of valence electrons are increasing, the conduction will correspondingly increase. In comparison to that, if we talk about electrolytes, the flow of electricity is due to the movement of ions, and therefore we can say that it is here we have the flow of matter involved. However, in case of metallic conductor, we do not involve any flow of, there is no flow of matter in the metallic conductors. Now, if we come further and look into the electrical, and the third difference, what we see is the electrical conduction decreases with increase in temperature. So in metallic conductors, what we see is the conduction kind of decreases with increasing temperature. In comparison to that, if we see in the electrolytes, the conductivity increases with increase in temperature. So why there is a difference like this? Because when you increase the temperature in metals, what happens is that the kernels or the lattice points in any metals, what happens is they starts to vibrate very strongly. So this vibration creates a kind of hindrance to the movement of the electron. So as the vibration, so we have various lattice points of the metal atoms present. So when these metal atoms kind of vibrates, it kind of blocks the flow of electron. Okay, so those lattice points or kernels which is occupied by atoms are what is responsible for the decreased conduction with increasing temperature. However, in the case of electrolytes, when you increase the temperature, what happens is the ions are formed to a greater extent. That means dissociation of substance happen more better, and therefore we have better conduction in the electrolytes when you increase the temperature. Now, finally, when we look into the fourth difference, what we find is the resistance offered by the metals is also
due to vibrating kernels. Okay, so whatever vibrations that I just now talked about, those vibrations are the ones that are responsible for resistance in metals. However, in electrolytes, the resistance is basically due to the interionic attractions, viscosity of the solvents. These are some of the main factors that are responsible for resistance in a electrolyte. Okay, so these are some of the major differences between the electrolytic conductors and the metallic conductors. So sometimes you might be asked the difference between the two. But in the coming videos, I'm going to restrict myself to electrolytic conductors and the various parameters connected with it. And so we are not going to talk here after metallic conductors. We'll be focusing all our attention on the electrolytic conductors. So thank you for watching. See you in the next video. Thank you.